recording to this computer. Okay, so we've got three of us. I'm here, Jonathan Karras. We have Matt Quinn, Thomas Spofford, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Hmm.
Um, and this is meeting. This is call number two, or video meeting number two in discussion of the Nervos community-inspired marketing video. The goal of this video is to create content that can help articulate the unique value proposition of the network and help inspire curiosity for primarily or initially English speakers to learn about what Nervos is and hopefully to get them interested in learning more. So far what we've done to date, we've been working on this project for about a month now. We have a Telegram group, which if you're watching this video later, the link will be below, so you can join our Telegram group. We have got 23 members. We've had hundreds of in-depth messages and hours of conversation of discussing on a theoretical level what's the best way to describe Nervos. And I wanted to share some thoughts that I got from another investor. I'm an investor in Nervos, and I find that Nervos is a very unique platform, but yet it's challenging with all the noise of the layer ones that have been launched in the end of tail end of 2019, and so far in 2020. Nervos kind of gets swept under the rug, even though I believe that it has a lot of value to offer. So what we've done to date is we've produced a high-level document with an outline of a script, actually two scripts. One of them is a general script of saying that Nervos is the ideal settlement layer because it's not dependent on transactional fees in order to create its security, and it's not dependent on a meme of a fixed supply, which offers tail end risk when block subsidy is reduced in the future. So it addresses and it has state rent, and it's proof of work. Well, I could just talk for like an hour on what makes Nervos great. So sorry about that. But the challenge is that even though it solves a lot of the problems of Bitcoin and Ethereum, is that if you just come straight with the narrative of this, yet another layer one solution, smart contract solution, is going to be an Ethereum killer, that falls on deaf ears. So we've identified two narratives that could be helpful to bring out the uniqueness. One of them is the focus on China. And this is, I had a call with Hasib and my partner Michael Hassan maybe 2 days ago. And this is what we came out of that call was really the strongest narrative, is that just like how Alibaba was able to corner the Asian market and not Amazon. And if you look at what's successful in Asia, they have homegrown versions of things that are equivalent in the West. And primarily, Ethereum has been most successful in Western markets, at least from developer adoption and from a marketing perspective. They take a very much English speaking first. So Nervos has taken a Chinese first, whether it's with relationships with Huobi, relationships with Chinese banks, or how they present themselves and focus themselves to developer community in terms of material. I constantly find myself taking Chinese content and then running it through a translator and then either reproducing it into English, where you can find I've probably produced now about 6 different tutorials and walkthroughs and things like that, about one a month for the last 6 months, which I intend to step up with that frequency now that I'm getting more comfortable dealing with the Chinese. Not that I speak Chinese, but I'm more comfortable translating. And so I want to open this up to hear from you guys. we've got the two narratives, or potentially two narratives. One of them being that this is a better, this solves problems that Bitcoin and Ethereum have. That's one kind of angle that we could really focus on as a main driver. The other angle that we have is that we're not trying to compete with them head on, but rather we're trying to go where the, like Wayne Gretzky says, that you want to skate to where the puck is going to be. That we anticipate that the next major adoption is going to be within the Asian markets, and that the platform that makes that a first priority is going to succeed there. Now, these don't need to be necessarily mutually exclusive narratives, but I want to hear from both of you. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts of the best way to capture the attention in, let's say, 90 to 180 seconds for somebody that's hearing about Nervos for the first time?
So from what I'm fairly new to the project, right? But from what I've seen so far, a lot of projects are interested in expanding into the Asian market, and that is a key catalyst to why they're interested in Nervos. I've also seen, just currently with the state of Ethereum, like the network congestion and the gas fees is like starting to impact people's business, and so that the push towards moving towards new protocols is incentivized by that somewhat. Another thing that I would mention is that Nervos can do things that the other protocols can't, not just fixing platforms, in the sense of adding new cryptography easily to layer one. I think there may be some compelling use cases that aren't currently possible on other chains that will emerge from that possibility.
What do you think is the best way for people to learn about these unique use cases? Because I know that I talked to the GrowFi team. I've talked to ABC Wallet. And I've talked to a couple other teams that are currently building on Nervos, and then through those conversations, I have, I've seen some of the subtleties as to why developers, really like the environment and really like the sell model. But I think that it's way too techy to for the average listener, especially if it's under the scope of like a 90-second or 3-minute video. So, do you think that there's a way that we can that we could at least even tease that and then point somebody to low-hanging fruit where they could learn more about what makes Nervos unique? And if not, then maybe that's content that we should create.
I I think if you start from a user's perspective, that may help. Of um, there's been discussion around like the chain can do like PGP key verification, which no blockchain is doing. Which that from a user's perspective, that won't land with most people. But you can also talk about like using existing infrastructure. Like there's a video that was just posted by the Lay 2 team of them using just the Opera, browser to deposit funds into the DAO. And I had another use case like right the like native mobile wallets of like you could just go to a website on your phone and have a wallet. And I think those things should resonate with a broader audience where we don't need to go into like why they're possible. We can just show like here, like here's a few things that you can do that like no other chain is doing. And that can, I think, then kind of roll into like you mentioned like the angle of adoption in Asia, which I think is great to pepper in there, but not to be like the leading thing of like, because I think the risk that comes in there is like it starts to sound like the narrative that Neo used. And
Yeah.
like it starts to become again like, oh, we've heard this before. China, Ethereum, that didn't work.
Yeah, I mean,
I think,
and there's Ant. I think there's a couple other players.
yeah,
Tron maybe tried that angle,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I don't think that anybody's really succeeded at it. But definitely
Correct.
different
Yeah,
project.
I agree. It's the same like ETH killer thing of like if you use a narrative that people have not succeeded on, people assume that you are like, when I heard this before, and you're just doing the same thing, and like that didn't work.
Yep, I hear that. I hear that. So, what I really like what you mentioned is I think that we're just beginning to get to the point where we can actually showcase UI elements
Yeah,
of dApps that are being built on Nervos, which is very powerful. Because
yeah,
if you look at like, if you look at like, let's look at the top 100 on CoinMarketCap, there's maybe 5 of those projects that you can actually say, here's a DApp, here's a piece of software that an
Yeah,
end user could interact with. And for us to
yeah,
be on that short list, I think that that's very powerful.
I agree.
Yeah, so Matt, the point that you brought up about how the cryptography support could be useful to normal users, it's just like there's no weird extra wallet software. It's just like you use the tools you currently have, and there's just an internet of value that everyone can do all these transactions. So I don't know what applications resonate with real users, considering like, oh, payments are very well handled. You know, like the
Yeah,
normal things that people do are handled.
Yep.
yeah. One example Jan likes to bring up a lot is like the notion of like if you receive an email, you could have some sort of, I guess, like a key attached to that email that then you can like validate on chain, like who is this? And I don't think that that particular use case necessarily like resonates broadly, but that concept of trust, like creating trust in our world, I feel like could be a very strong narrative because it is so hard to get trust in anything nowadays. Like it seems like that, like the trust model of the world is kind of broken. So when I think about like how to kind of pitch Nervos to like a broader audience, like that concept of like creating mechanisms that we can use to create trust, like seems to kind of always like pull back to like what is a broader narrative about like why blockchains can be useful in the first place. And I think with because Nervos is so generalized, it allows us to step kind of outside of like the financial or transactional use cases because it's just open ended. So something like verifying a PGP key, like you can do that. Um, yeah.
That's interesting. Um, what about developer tools or like a state of the union? Kind of what I'm hearing from this is that it could even be possible not to try and create necessarily evergreen content, but to rather create almost like a state of the union content of saying like, hey, it's been 6 months since mainnet launch, and here's
Yeah,
everything that's happened in the last 6 months, and it's
I
just
think
like
it's
a
a great idea.
showcase.
Yeah,
That also because I think that there has been a lot, and if you compare the progress on Nervous to the progress on many other chains, again, that gives a testament as to how that helps you project as to where this community is going to be in 1 to 2 years' time.
I mean, Thomas, you're probably good to comment on this because you've kind of seen it like coming in, like from the outside to the inside, as far as like the like technical capabilities of the project go.
So I can already say like in the last couple of months since I even like became aware of the project and read about it, it's already advanced dramatically, right? Like we have like the first versions of proper developing tools for like the Rust scripting and the DApp development now that didn't exist a couple of years ago. You know, the documentation's already improved a lot in that time. So yeah, I think there's a lot of progress being made there very quickly, and that will continue to accelerate. One point I wanted to bring up regarding the narratives is for me, it's just kind of like, okay, like with the pandemic and economic fallout and everything, want to project like positive visions for the future, like
Right.
optimistic sci-fi, and like how like Nervos fits into that. And one thing that I'm personally interested in is kind of improving the distribution of wealth in the sense of like uh, like I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Fairmint or continuous organizations where like equity can kind of be distributed amongst the community flexibly, and have like dividend tokens and that sort of stuff. Just I guess the high level idea is trying to fix a lot of the issues people perceive with current capitalist systems and move it
Hmm.
in like a more positive direction.
So that's I would kind of put that as well defined uh, uh, and an applicable DAO infrastructure that you can
Mhm.
build a custom DAO relatively easily, and then use that to help manage capital, and then help organize and reward or compensate contributors.
Yeah, just letting that be more flexible, I guess,
Okay.
legal structures.
That's so okay. So let's brainstorm now about how what would you envision to be next step? Have a good day.
Bye, Jonathan.
Bye. What would you envision are next milestones that talking where we came up with this idea of a community focused series of video content probably about 2 months ago. And one of the things that we've learned from it is that it's very challenging to incorporate so many different voices and so many different concepts, especially when people come from different backgrounds. We have people that are participating in the chat that are English is their second language and they're primarily just speculators. We have people that are are coming at it, purely because they're let's call it Rust nerds, and they are proof of work, enthusiasts. We've got people that are very into the state rent issue, or even like the Nervous DAO, which deals with the block subsidy issues, and so they all come kind of with, it's almost like the story of the elephant, that everybody kind of is grabbing a different part of the elephant and then trying to describe it. So one of the things that I'm struggling with is how to make tangible progress. I think that the next stage that we need to get to is kind of a high level script that everybody is at least moderately happy with. So then that way we can start bringing the script to different video creators, and then start getting some concept ideas and quotes and things like that. So any advice or thoughts about how we can move the project forward?
I think so. I really liked the way that that there was a current document I was trying to find where it was like basically like pulling some quotes out that could be like the backbone of the video. And I think like the first step is to really get down the message of like, are we talking about like a vision? Are we talking about a user's perspective? Are we talking about more like technical considerations or long-term considerations? And really like refining that down to like, what is this video about? And then some sort of, similar to that concept of quotes, some sort of storyboard of like visuals as well, of like what, at 10 seconds into the video, what kind of visual, what kind of element are we bringing in? And I think the most important thing is that clarity around like what is a video about, basically the scope of the video. And my personal opinion is that it should be more general, because it seems like a lot of these things that we talk about, like the state rent or the flexible cryptography, they're all like long-term considerations. And for somebody who just like lands on the project, they want something like what is this about, like today and now? And like when we tell them, there's this exciting thing coming in 2 months, like it kind of falls on deaf ears. So I feel like, the idea that like, in 50 years, Bitcoin may have problems with security, like people don't want to hear that today.
Yep, yeah. It's also the same thing. It's like, well, DeFi might really take off on Ethereum, but it might not capture value to the ETH token. It's like people look at you and they're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
Even though if you look at if you look at the price of Comp or Ava or any of these other or Kyber, you can see that anybody who was just holding ETH over the last 6 months is feeling pretty sheepish right now.
So we may be able to latch on to like the gas price is like something that's like tangible today. So that is one thing I've noticed of like things become relevant when like they're happening now. Where it's like if we talk about issues.
Let's address that though. Is that why would if blocks are full and Nervous, why wouldn't the gas price be high?
Well, it's the same thing. It's just that the idea is like we could probably accomplish a lot more in those blocks than Ethereum can, because of the efficiency of the computation, and also because of the design patterns that people are forced into. I think like the on-chain computation thing like provides people a lot of, I guess like the Ponzi's are a good example of this. I mean, it provides a lot of like room for people to abuse the platform. And
I'm just saying that the Ponzi's with taking up like The Ponzi's that are taking up like a third of the resource
Exactly. Yeah.
on Ethereum. Yeah.
Or even like the tether transfers of like, if you could batch, tether transfers, I mean, how much does that decrease, like how much like of the block that's taking up?
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. So I think that that's a great. I think that the next step then is to kind of, well, first of all, just circulate this video, because even though we didn't get a lot of participants, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to come on here and chat. I did want to keep this something short, but I think that what we'll get is that everybody that's in the Telegram chat will probably have their own 2 cents, or sometimes even 20 cents to share on the topics that we discussed here. And then we'll be able to kind of run that through a filter, some type of sieve, and then and then let the conversation naturally evolve as to where we want to put the focus, and then update the existing doc, which I'll also put the link below in this YouTube video here. Let's call it a third proposal, which kind of combines the ideas and maybe adds a little bit more of historical accomplishment, as to like what have we seen that's been new, and also what are we excited about, which gives it more of a realness to it, like what you said. Nobody cares about promises for way in the future. They want to see what you've done today.
Cool.
All right. Anything else? Thomas, anything you want to share?
I know, yeah, I think that's all good. And a lot of the stuff on Nervos is, having this long-term vision that makes sense. That took everything that came before it and iterated on that. I mean, that was the thing that was compelling to me, like as an Ethereum nerd coming into the project, was all that stuff and all the techie stuff, basically that and the Rust and the cryptography. I just got excited by the possibilities there.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents about me as the target audience, which is a potential part of the target audience.
Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for sharing your thoughts. And I look forward to continuing the conversation on Telegram.
Awesome. Thanks for
Sounds good.
organizing.
All right.
Yeah, thanks
Have
for
a
the
good one.
office tour.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
All right. Talk soon, Jonathan. Bye.